So I'm Divakar Vyas. As Isabella mentioned, I'm an assistant professor of animal sciences. I have been working with different aspects of ruminant nutrition. And the models I have worked with are beef cattle, dairy cattle, sheep, and goat. So the good thing is that although we are working with different species, but all are ruminants, so some of the concepts are common to all of them. So that's why we keep switching back and forth between different experimental models. Today's presentation is focused on the nutrition aspects of sheep and goat. Most of it will be focused on sheep, but some of these concepts that I'll be sharing are also applicable to goats. And throughout this presentation, I will be discussing some of the very, very basic concepts of nutrition. I think some of you or most of you might be familiar with that, but I thought it is important to cover some of the basic concepts and to build on those basic concepts to have some nutritional or advanced nutritional ration formulation knowledge to pass on. Having said that, sometimes during my presentation, I may talk very fast, so feel free to stop me because that is just, I cannot control sometimes. So please interrupt me and then I'll try to slow down. Okay, so getting started with this presentation, whenever we think about any topic, the very first thing that comes to our mind is that why are we interested in this topic? So in the case of nutrition, the first question that comes to our mind is why nutrition is important. So it doesn't matter which livestock species we are working with. In every livestock production system, feeding cost is one of the major expense of the production system. And sheep and goat is not an exception. Depending on the kind of operation, the feeding cost may range from 50 to 70%. So it is very important that we are using this feed more efficiently. And we can only use this feed more efficiently if we have some basic concepts of nutrition and ration formulation handy with us. Nutrition is also a foundation for very good health. If we are providing adequate nutrients, it is very important to build immunity for these animals. So animals that are on high plane of nutrition are more resistant to many diseases. And again, the emphasis of nutrition is very important because nutritional problems are second only to the respiratory problems in the frequency of occurrence. Because sometimes we are thinking that we are providing a very well adequate, balanced diet, but still animals are not getting enough nutrients, or they are getting more nutrients than what is needed. So that results in either undernutrition or overnutrition, and then can result in some of the metabolic or nutritional disorders. And we will discuss some of this concept of having the nutrition impact on reproduction. So you can see that the nutrition has a big impact on different aspects of the production system. If you think about a holistic approach of this whole production system of small ruminants, nutrition plays a very important role. And that's why we should be focusing a lot on the nutrition. So when we are talking about nutrition, we are talking about feeds. We are talking about some grasses, forages, concentrates, minerals, vitamins. So animals do not need feeds, right? We are providing them feeds. We are providing corn grain, barley, soybean meal, bahia grass. Animals don't need feed. Animal needs nutrients. And when we talk about these nutrients, and the feed is providing nutrients, if the feeds are providing adequate amounts of nutrients, we call it a good quality feed. And if they do not provide good quality of nutrients, we call it a poor quality feed. But every animal has some of these nutrient requirements, starting with energy. In this presentation, the energy will be presented as a total digestible nutrients, or TDN. Now, when we talk about TDN This is the formula here. I hope you can see my cursor so that I can move on the point which I'm discussing. So total digestible nutrients are the digestible crude protein, digestible crude fat, cell wall contents, and non-structural carbohydrates. All of these components of the feed, we estimate digestibility of those components, and then based on that, we estimate the total digestible nutrients. And that's a proxy for energy in the diet. The second is crude protein. It allows us to measure the nitrogen in the diet. And because these are ruminants, some of the nitrogen is available in the rumen, which is called as rumen degradable protein. And some of the nitrogen from this protein is not available in the rumen, not degraded in the rumen, and is available in the small intestine. We call it a rumen undegraded protein. So these are energy and protein, two major nutrients that is very important to balance when we are formulating diets. Another very important component are minerals, macrominerals like calcium, phosphorus, sodium, chloride, potassium, magnesium, and sulfur, and microminerals like cobalt, copper, iron. Macrominerals are provided in percentages of dry matter, and microminerals are provided in ppms, like milligrams in a kilogram of the diet. Vitamins, fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, K, and some water-soluble vitamins C and B complex. Although ruminants can synthesize, rumen microbes can synthesize water-soluble vitamins, but still, some of the research has shown that if they are provided in the diet, they can have some impact on the production. And last but not the least, which sometimes we forget to mention, is water. Providing adequate quantity of water is very, very important to make sure that the nutrients that are applied in the feed or provided in the feed are more efficiently utilized. Okay, so in the course of this presentation, the nutrient requirements that I will be mentioning are coming from nutrient requirements of small ruminants. This came out in 2007, and it provides nutrient requirements for sheep and goat at different physiological stages. And no matter which livestock species we are working with, nutrient requirements are variable, and they depend on so many factors, including which species we are working with, breed, body weight of the animals, age and sex, physiological stage. For example, either these ewes are dry, lactating, pregnancy, early gestation, late gestation, lambs. Depending on which physiological stage they are in, the nutrient requirements will be different. The level of production, if ewes are nursing 1 lamb or 2 lamb or 3 lamb, the milk production is different, and then the requirements are different. And also the environment. Here in Florida or the Southeast, heat stress can have a huge impact on the nutrient requirements. We can't say the cold stress here, but if we go up north, cold stress can affect nutrient requirements as well. So in a nutshell, what I want to convey is that there are so many factors that can affect the nutrient requirements, and it is very important to consider those factors when we are looking at the nutrient requirement of an animal and we are balancing the diets. So I'll just quickly give you an example of the requirements of a ewe. She's 154 pounds, mature body weight. Okay. So on the x-axis, we have different physiological stages: maintenance, early gestation, late gestation with single fetus, late gestation with twins, lactation, nursing single lamb, and lactation, nursing twins. Okay, so these are different physiological stages on the x-axis, and on the y-axis, on left-hand side, it is crude protein in grams per day, and on the right-hand side of the y-axis, we have dry matter intake and energy. So the first example is for protein. Now this is the protein requirement in grams per day. And you can see that for maintenance, the protein requirement is only 89 grams per day, and we go to lactation, the requirement is 306 grams per day. We're talking about the same animal, 154 pounds, mature body weight animal. But look at different physiological stages, they change the requirement of protein. Okay. Now this is the example of dry matter intake. How much of feed this ewe can consume? If this animal is on maintenance, she will be consuming around 2.6 pounds of dry matter per day. In later slides, I'll share how we convert dry matter to fresh. But 2.6, we have to make sure that this protein, 89 grams of crude protein, is available in 2.6 pounds of dry matter. But as we go up, animals do increase intake. But look at this phase here. This is very interesting. At this phase, the requirements are increasing, but animals cannot consume more. So for example, late gestation with twins, she can consume 4.1 pounds of dry matter. Lactation with twins, she can consume 4.36 pounds of dry matter. Look at the difference in protein here, 192 grams and 306 grams. There's a huge difference in the protein requirement, but still animals cannot consume more feed. So what we have to do is that we have to provide more nutrient-dense rations for lactation. That's why we see that the energy density, the protein density of lactation is higher. Now this is energy. Energy follows the same trend like protein. It keeps on increasing with the physiological stage. Now I'm superimposing the concentration or the density of nutrients here on the diet. Now the upper row is the total digestible nutrients in percent, and the lower row is crude protein percent. You can see for maintenance, we don't need a very good quality diet. 51% of TDN is a okay quality diet. It's not a very good quality. Protein less than 10% is a low protein diet. We don't need a very good quality feed to maintain an animal that is 154 pounds. But look at lactation. An animal who is nursing, a ewe is nursing twins. 64% of TDN and 15.5% of crude protein. We have to make sure we feed this animal a very good quality diet to make sure she meets energy and the protein requirements so that she can provide enough nutrients for lambs. It is very important. So the point I want to convey from this slide is that the density of the ration, the concentration of the nutrients changes over time. It is mainly related with how much of feed these animals can consume. At this point, animals cannot consume more feed, so we have to provide more concentration of nutrients. Okay, in this presentation, I will be discussing how we are feeding different stages of ewes and does. So these different stages includes gestation, early versus mid gestation, lactation, again early versus late lactation, weaning. Dry period is the period once the lambs are weaned and ewe is no longer lactating. And then there's a phase where we have to prepare these animals for breeding season. So I will be covering some of the very important factors which we should consider when we are providing nutrition to these animals. Okay, before I jump into some of the rations and some of the nutrient requirements, I would like to share the expected weight changes at different physiological stage. And it is very important to know what is normal and what is not normal as far as weight changes are concerned. Okay, so here, as you can see, the horizontal axis, these are 12 months. This is the point where ewes are lambing. Okay, so this is 11 means 1 month before lambing, 4 weeks before lambing. And this black solid line shows the body weight gain. As you can see that in last 4 weeks, the body weight gain occurs around 10 pounds. This is just an average value. And then at lambing, body weight is lost by around 40 pounds. Now, at this point, these ewes are lactating. We need to make sure we're providing enough nutrients, but at this point, they will be taking nutrients out from the body reserves. So we do expect loss in the body weight. We do expect loss in the body condition, and that is very normal physiology of mothers. At this point, you can see that for about 4 months, the body weight keeps on going down because ewes are using the body reserves. These are wet ewes. Now we are weaning lambs here, so the milk production stops. This is the time when they will start gaining body condition. Okay, so now they are slowly gaining body condition. At this point, we are breeding these animals. We need to make sure they are in an optimal body condition score so that we can successfully breed them. And slowly they are in the gestation, early phase of gestation. You can see the body weight gain. And then the late phase of gestation, again, a steep increase in the body weight because fetus is growing mostly in the later part of the gestation. And again, at lambing, the body weight goes down. So these fluctuations in the body weight are very, very normal. The problem is when these fluctuations are extreme, that results in a body weight loss, which is more than normal. That's the point of concern. But again, fluctuations are normal. So body condition scoring is one of the most important managemental practice that I think every producer should follow. If we are not weighing animals, if we are not balancing animals, if we are not formulating diets at the farm, okay? But we still want to make sure that if animals are getting enough nutrients, this is the tool we have to come up with. This is the tool we have to use. What does this do? It evaluates the adequacy of the feed that you were providing earlier. Because the body condition score you are seeing right now is based on the feed that you have been providing several weeks before that. Okay, so it provides a very indirect assessment of the quality of the feed. It also helps in determining the future feed requirements. If the body condition score is very poor, we know that we have to add more energy in the diet, right? If the body condition score is too high, if animals are obese, we need to make sure that we need to cut back. So it determines the future feed requirements. It also helps in assessing the health status of individual animals. So body condition scoring is a very, very important tool, and I highly encourage everyone to follow this tool, to practice this tool at the farm. Quickly going over the body condition score, the scale is from 1 to 5. And again, as I said, most of you must be very aware of this, but I thought it is very important to just put it out there to emphasize the importance and to emphasize what are different grades. So scale 1 to 5, body condition 1 is emaciated. We do not want these animals at our farm. Body condition 5, obese, we do not want these animals at our farm. Regardless of any physiological state, we do not want these animals. Okay, so we try to avoid body condition score 1 and body condition score 5. So what do I mean when I say body condition score? We have to feel the spine, the prominence of the spine, and how sharp the spine is, and how sharp the transverse processes is on the side. If you can feel the spine very prominent, and there is no layer of fat, I mean, this is emaciated sheep. On the side, if we just put our fingers and without any pressure, we can easily feel the transverse processes. There is no fat layer, and this is an emaciated condition. On the contrary, we go to obese, body condition score 5, we keep trying to feel these spine prominences, transverse processes, but we fail because the layer of fat is so thick. We do not want these animals at our dairy. So I highly encourage that we go through these body condition scoring scales, and we make sure we do this regularly to make sure that the feed quality we're providing is adequate for our animals. Now, this is a thumb rule. One body condition score is about 13% change in body weight. Let's take an example, 150 pounds of you, okay? She is a 3 body condition score. Now, after a couple of weeks, we measure body condition score, and now she is 2. So that means that she has lost around 13%. So quick math, 150, 13%, around 20 pounds. She has lost around 20 pounds of weight. So this is a thumb rule how body condition score can give us an estimate of the body weight. These are some examples of how the body condition score, I mean, with 1 or 1.5, you don't even have to feel the prominence of the spine and the transverse processes. You can easily look at the animal and say that this is an emaciated condition and this is body condition score 1 or 1.5. This is an ideal condition. Again, depending on which physiological stage we're talking about, this is an ideal condition for breeding. We want our animals to look like this when we are preparing them for breeding. Just when we are weaning animals, it may be lesser than that. So these are some of the guidelines for our body condition score. Again, as I said, never ever have 1 or 5 at our farm. It ranges from 2 to 4. For breeding, the optimal body condition is around 3 to 3.5. Lambing is around 2.5 to 3. We do not want obese animals to go for lambing. We do not want emaciated animals to go for lambing. It results in so many disorders. It compromises the performance of lambs as well. At weaning, body condition score 2, this should be the minimum. And we do expect lower body condition score at weaning, right? Because animals are milking, they are providing nutrients to these to the lambs. So we do expect body weight loss, and we have mentioned that in our previous figure. In our dry period, again, when they are not lactating, 3 to 3.5 is an optimal body condition. For rams and bucks, pre-breeding body condition score is around 3 to 4. That is considered optimal. So the problem with the low body condition score during late gestation and lambing is that it may result in some of the nutritional disorders like pregnancy toxemia. I have some, sorry, I completely missed us. There are some chat comments. Do we have any comments so far? Because I completely overlooked the comments we had in the chat. Or I can continue.
We did have one come through early on. I was kind of waiting, but I'll put that in the chat right now so you can take a look at it and respond to it.
Sure. For some reason, I cannot see the comments. I'm going to chat. I'm clicking it, but it's not opening the chat box.
Okay. I'll if you want, I'll ask this one for you. So it's one of the attendees asked. She's got a small farm in Port Orange, has a herd of 13 Nubians, one rescue special needs. They're getting a customer blend from the local mill, but she's decided to stop feeding corn. Mm-hmm. She wants to do her own mix, but needs kind of some guidance on that in blending ingredients, still ending up with the correct ratio. For example, she uses oats, alfalfa pellets, and maybe sunflower seeds, but doesn't know how to figure out the right amounts for mixing them correctly. You have kind of a response on that?
Yeah, sure. I think this is a very, very valid question. So what I would recommend is that, first of all, get the nutritive value of all the ingredients that you're trying to mix in a concentrate mix. Because without getting those values, we will have no way to figure out whether the concentrate mix that you're preparing is of good quality or it's not of good quality, okay? So once we know the values, once we know the nutrient composition of individual ingredients, then we look at what kind of animals we are feeding and what are their requirements. we have to match this concentrate mix so that when we are providing that in the diet, it meets the requirement of those animals. So unfortunately, I mean, there is no single way of figuring out this is an ideal mix. It all depends on the ingredients that we're adding, and it all depends on the nutrient values of those ingredients. Because again, I can share values of oats, I can share values of alfalfa pellets, but there's a huge variation in that as well. I cannot have some default values, make a concentrate mix based on default values, and then start feeding them. I might not be providing a good quality feed to them. So again, I think I have some slides where I will go through some of these formulation calculations, and hopefully this will help in conveying this concept on how to come up with some of the mixes at the farm. I hope this helps. Okay. Any other question, Luke, you want me to address, or I can continue?
We've got two more if you want to take a quick minute.
Sure.
One came through, we give goats loose mineral free choice. Is that very important to maintain optimal body condition scoring?
It is very, very important to maintain optimal body condition score. And again, the optimal body condition score varies from one stage to another physiological stage, right? So there is no one number, as I mentioned here. If we are at the lactation, then the body condition score will be lesser as compared to animals that are ready to be bred. But again, we should remember what are the optimal body condition score at different physiological stage and try to maintain that. As far as loose minerals are concerned, yes, I think that's a very good strategy to make sure that animals are not deficient in minerals. I have seen at the farms that they are providing salt blocks, so that contains most of it is a salt. So what salt does is a couple of things. I mean, it is a carrier for a lot of different minerals, right? But at the same time, it does not allow animals to consume more because it's salt. They cannot consume more. So free choice salt, I think that it's always a good idea. There are certain minerals we have to be very careful about, like selenium, where the toxicity levels are very, very finicky. I mean, we have to make sure what are the amounts we have in the soil, what are the amounts we are providing the feed, and what are the amounts we have in the mineral premix we are providing. Right. So there are certain minerals we have to be very, very cautious about. But I think most, if I go for a very common approach, yeah, I mean, it's a good idea to provide a free choice. Yeah, any other question on the second question?
Okay, we've got a few coming in. Why don't we answer maybe one more, and then we can kind of keep through. I don't want to stop you on your
sounds good.
Your presentation. This one was, our St. Croix sheep are much smaller. Would, or I'll add, should the percentages remain the same for protein and minerals?
Yes. Yes, it should stay the same, because what happens is that these are small breed. I totally agree. But then they will be consuming less as well because their body weight is less, right? So when we talk about percent, it is this much grams out of 100 as a percent of body weight. So yeah, let's keep the same percent and try to achieve that, because they'll be consuming less. They'll be anyway getting less nutrients. But if we maintain same percentage, we'll make sure they are getting adequate nutrients.
Thank you. We'll there are a few other questions, but we'll continue on and answer them as they kind of come through.
Sounds great. Thank you very much, Luke. Okay, now let's dig into some of the values, some of the math that is associated with the ration formulation. And again, as I said, these are some very, very basic, and most of you might be very familiar with that. So let's start with dry use. Okay, so this is the physiological stage where we have weaned animals. Now they are no longer lactating. So basically they are maintaining their body weight. Okay, so the values that I'm providing here, these are coming from the NRC 2007 nutrient requirements for sheep and goat. So I'm just providing this couple of examples. The body weight is around 132 pounds or 154 pounds. Now, the dry matter intake, now this animal can consume is around 1.75% of the body weight. So that means they will be consuming 2.31 pounds of dry matter. Okay. Now the TDN requirement is 1.23 pounds for this animal for maintenance, and crude protein requirement is 0.167. Okay. So what that means is that the TDN should be around 53.2% and crude protein should be around 7.22%. How did I get this value? It is 1.23 pounds divided by 2.31, it's a dry matter, times 100. So this gives me how much TDN, how much percent of TDN I'm providing. So 53% of TDN, 7.22% of crude protein for 132 pounds of dry U. And this is 154 pounds of dry U. This is 52.37.19. This is not a very good quality diet, right? So we do not need to spend more money on maintaining these animals. If they are grazing, we need to make sure the nutritive value of the grass that they are grazing, but I'm pretty sure they can maintain this. They can get all the nutrients just from the forages they are grazing. They don't have a huge requirement. So for example, they are grazing animals and they are grazing a pasture, and the pasture has a dry matter of 24%. Now this 2.31 pounds I got from here, from 132 pounds of dry matter. Okay, 132 pounds of dry matter, 2.31 pounds of dry matter, it's here. And pasture is 24%. So how much pasture they should consume to get 2.31 pounds of dry matter? I get 2.31 divided by 24%, I get 9.75 pounds. So what that means is that if these animals are consuming 10 pounds of grass, they are meeting, they will get around 2.31 pounds of dry matter from this 10 pounds of from fresh pasture. 2.6 pounds for 154 pound body weight, consuming the same pasture with 24% dry matter, they will be consuming 10.8 pounds. So it is very important to see this difference, right? The requirement for these animals is 2.6 pounds of dry matter, but then they have to consume around 11 pounds of fresh grass to get that much amount. And that's where, things get a little complicated, because right now it's okay. But when we come to lactation, maybe these animals cannot consume that much grass. They cannot consume more than 11 to 12 pounds of grass a day. So then what we do, we then provide some supplements so that, the rest of the nutrients are coming from the supplements. They don't have to consume that much pasture. Quickly giving an example of hay feeding. Now, I want to just convey the difference in the dry matter here. So pasture has 24% dry matter. They are very wet feed. And the hay dry matter is around 88%. They are very dry. So that means if we are feeding around 2.63 pounds of hay, that will give us around 2.31 pounds of dry matter. So it is almost same amount, right? So the difference is the dry matter we have in the feed. And we have to understand this to appreciate the amount of feed that should be provided to animals to get enough nutrients. But again, having said that, for maintenance, no, they don't need a very good quality diet. So right after weaning, if they are on just grazing outside, they should be fine. They should be fine. Okay, nutrient requirements for breeding. So this is the maintenance requirement that I shared in the previous slide. And this is the breeding requirement for the same two animals, 132 pounds and 154 pounds, right? So if you look at these numbers, they are slightly higher. So what is the difference? It's a 10% increase in the requirements. So compared to maintenance, we need to provide 10% more nutrients when animals are preparing for breeding. Or in some way, we can say that, they have to be flushed. They have to be provided some good quality feed so that they are very well prepared for breeding and the chances for successful conception. So what is flushing? Flushing is supplementing females with some grains or providing them a high quality pasture to make sure they are getting enough nutrients for breeding that increases ovulation and birthing rates. So we start this flushing 2 weeks before breeding. Okay, so make sure that we prep these animals for breeding, and then we continue 3 to 4 weeks into breeding season. We do not have to continue for a very long duration. As long as 3 to 4 weeks after breeding season, that is fine. Most of the time, the thumb rule is we just provide half a pound of grain, because you can see that, yes, there's a difference in the requirement for energy and protein, but the difference is not that huge. It is 10% requirement, and that can be met with half a pound of a grain. The data on flushing has been all over the place. I was just reading some of the literature from St. Croix. I just read a couple of studies, and there is in no way, I mean, this is entire literature search, but in just 2 studies, they did not find any effects of flushing on ovulation rate or birthing rates. But there are some other species where they have found some good response. So the concept of flushing, I think it started when, these animals were range animals. They were in a very poor body condition score, and they have to be bred. So they were brought in, they were fed a very good quality diet so that they are preparing for breeding. But if animals are in good body condition score, we may need to think the strategy whether we need to flush them or not. Maybe we don't need to flush them. And at this point, I think it is very important that producers should keep looking at whether they are getting any effect of flushing or not. If they are not getting any effect of flushing, I don't think they need to do flushing if the body condition score is optimal. If the body condition score is less than 3, 2.5, yes, it is highly recommended. Mature ewes respond better than yearling. Keep ewes pasture containing high levels of legumes, because legumes may have estrogen content, and there are some data that shows that they are consuming a lot of legumes. It may delay estrus. So I don't know if it's a very common finding, but there are some research studies that have suggested this. Okay, now we covered maintenance, we covered breeding. Now let's move on to gestation. And this is just the initial part of gestation, the first 100 days of gestation. Let's just appreciate the difference in nutrient requirements now. For breeding, I said it is 10% increase in the requirements, but for gestation, you can see that there's almost 43% increase in the requirements. For 132 pounds of body weight, the total digestible nutrients needed was 1.23 pounds. But here, for 132 pounds of body weight, the total digestible nutrients needed is 1.76. So the requirement for energy has gone up, the requirement for protein has gone up by about 40%. So why? What's happening in this early phase of gestation? It is first 90 to 100 days, approximately 150 days of gestation period. Embryo implantation is happening around day 20 to 24. Mammary gland is developing around day 30 to day 90, between day 30 to 90. Placenta is developing between 1st to 3 months. Okay. We have to make sure that we do not provide a very, very good quality diet, very high energy diets to these animals, because we do not want our animals to be obese. We do not want our ewes to be obese. So it is very important that we make sure we just meet the nutrient requirement. They don't need, yes, their nutrient requirements have increased, but it's not a very, very good quality diet. They don't need a very good quality diet still. So make sure animals don't get obese. I think 0.1 pounds per day is an accepted guideline for this phase. And the TDN is around 53.1 at this phase, and crude protein is around 8.2%. Again, less than 10% crude protein. It's not a very good high protein diet, TDN is an average 50-55%. They don't need a very good quality diet at this point still. Now, we are entering into the most crucial phase of this entire production system as far as nutrition is concerned. If you want to focus on one stage, we really want to formulate your diets. This is the first stage, and the second stage would be lactation. So the late gestation is last 50 days until birth. Okay, energy is most likely to be deficient nutrient here. We need to make sure these animals are getting enough energy. Protein requirements are still not very high. So again, I'm just providing these nutrient requirements of use the twin lambs and use with triplets. Okay, you can see that there's a huge increase in the energy requirement, 66.1% compared to 53% for the early gestation. But again, the protein is just 10% in the diet. So that's why we say that energy is most likely to be deficient in this phase of the production system as compared to protein. Okay, calcium requirements double during late gestation, and selenium and vitamin E are crucial, and that's why it is very important to formulate diets for this for the late gestation use. So what's happening at the late gestation? Most of the fetus growth happens in the last phase of gestation. 70% of it. They have the limited rumen capacity. That means animals cannot consume more feed. Mammary gland is developing as well, and rumen capacity is decreasing. So that means animals cannot consume more feed, and still the requirements are increasing. That's why you see more percent of nutrients need to be available to these animals. So supplement with high moisture or dry forages, and we may need to provide concentrates to meet the nutrient requirements. We should not be providing any low quality feeds at this stage. Low quality feeds can be used for the maintenance, can be used for early gestation, but it's a big emphatic no for late gestation and for lactation. Okay, and do not overfeed. If we are providing a good quality diet, we don't have to overfeed. We do not want to provide them over nutrition, because then animals will be obese. They will have some problems with the lambing. So just pregnancy with triplets, you can see that the TDN has increased to 80%, and then crude protein is around 12% diet. So yes, animals have very high nutrient requirements at this stage. So what are the consequences of poor nutrition? Underfeeding, animals will be very prone to nutritional disorders. That's why I say ration formulation is very important. Having an eye on what kind of nutrients you are providing, how much nutrients you are providing is very important. Pregnancy toxemia or milk fever. Milk fever is low calcium or hypocalcemia. Pregnancy toxemia is when there's low blood glucose or energy precursors in the blood, and animals use fat. This using fat for energy generates ketone bodies, and they are toxic. So it can result in pregnancy toxemia. The underfeeding might result in a weaker lamb and kids. So that means that we are compromising the performance of the progeny. The mortality increases for the neonates. It compromises the quality and the quantity of colostrum, which is very important in making sure that the newborns are getting enough immunoglobulins. And there's less milk production. Less milk production means, again, the newborns or the neonates are not getting enough nutrients from that milk. So there are so many factors. We just do not provide enough nutrients in this stage. It results in so many different consequences, and which are very important consequences in terms of the progeny performance. Overfeeding is also a problem. Overfeeding results in obese animals at lambing. It may result in dystocia because it's difficult lambing. These animals are more prone to vaginal prolapse. Oversized lambs have higher mortality And this whole process is expensive, right? Overfeeding is not cheap. We do not want to provide nutrients where we don't need to provide nutrients. Underfeeding, you are saving money, but then you're losing at a later stage. But with the overfeeding, you are losing money right at that spot. We don't need to provide nutrients when we don't have to. Okay, so health problems, as I mentioned, pregnancy toxemia and hypocalcemia. So pregnancy toxemia, as I mentioned, inadequate intake of energy during late gestation, fat breakdown, produces ketone bodies. We need to provide some intravenous glucose to treat these animals. And hypocalcemia is a low blood calcium. We treat with either oral, sub-Q, or intravenous calcium. Okay, quickly, I'll just share a couple of slides for the diet formulation. So this sheet is for maintenance animals. So here I have provided the requirement of these animals. So these are maintenance animals. The body weight is again 132 pounds, 154 pounds. Dry matter intake requirements, TDN and crude protein. Okay. So we have two feeds available at the farm. One is Bermuda grass hay, and second is corn grain. And this is the nutritive value of hay and the grain, TDN and crude protein. Okay, it is very important for us to have the nutritive value of the ingredients that we have at the farm. So for the formulation of the diet, if I feed 3 pounds of Bermuda grass hay, I can provide 2.67 pounds of dry matter. We can see here that for 154 pounds of animals, the requirement is 2.6 pounds. I'm providing 2.67 pounds. The TDN coming from Bermuda grass hay is around 1.42, and crude protein is 0.27. We are not adding any. I'm sorry. This has to be corn grain. I'm not adding any grains here because I don't need to. The total nutrient supplied is here, and these are the requirements. So we are meeting requirement just with hay, nothing else. We are providing 3 pounds of hay, and animals are able to maintain their body weight or maintain all the functions. So this is an example of maintenance. And I highly encourage all of you to have this either Excel sheet or on a paper, just to do this very quick math on how much of the nutrients you're providing with the diets. It will be very, very handy in making sure you're providing adequate nutrition to your animals. So just in this case, for maintenance, you may not need to provide any grains because hay is meeting all the requirements. Now let's look at breeding. So again, these are the requirements for breeding. The same feeds available, Bermuda grass hay, corn grain. This is my first formulation where I'm just adding Bermuda grass hay, okay? If I provide 3.2 pounds of hay, I'm getting 2.8 pounds of dry matter intake. You can see that we are only getting TDN, which is 1.42 pounds, and the requirement is 1.52. So we are not meeting energy requirement. If we look at crude protein, the requirement is 0.22, and we're providing 0.27 pounds. So we are meeting protein requirement, but we are not meeting energy requirements. So it's right from the breeding stage. I mean, the problem is we are lacking or energy is limiting. So I made a second diet in which I reduced the amount of Bermuda grass hay and I added a corn grain in it. Now you can see that the requirement is 1.52 and we are providing 1.57. So we are meeting energy requirements, we are meeting protein requirements. So yes, half a pound of grain, we will make sure that we are providing enough energy, enough protein for our breeding animals. We don't need to provide anything else, at least for energy and protein. Okay, on the lactation diets, again, early gestation diets are very important to make sure we are providing enough nutrients, and lactation diets are very important because this is the phase where the nutrient requirements are maximum compared to any other stage of the animal. So high nutrient requirements, energy and protein. If we have access to high quality forage for lactation diet, this is the phase where we have to use those high quality forage. Okay. The thumb rule is 1 pound of grain for each lamb. If ewes are nursing 2 lambs, 2 pounds of grain. 3 lambs, 3 pounds of grain. This is just a thumb rule. If we are not formulating diets, at least if we are providing this much, we can, and with an average quality of forage, I think it will be okay as far as adequacy of nutrients is concerned. For milking animals, if we feed 1 pound of concentrate for every 3 pounds of milk produced, it is enough. It is adequate. So these are the requirements for early lactation: 1 lamb, 2 lamb, and 3 lamb, and you can appreciate the difference in these requirements. As we increase the number of lambs, as we increase the number of nursing lambs, the requirements for energy and protein increases. See? So this is just the energy demands at a different physiological stage. The reason I mentioned that the lactation phase is very important, because you can see that in all the physiological stages, from maintenance to breeding to gestation to lactation, this is the phase where the energy requirements are maximum, and we need to make sure that we meet these requirements here. So the highest nutrient requirements will be at around first 6 to 8 weeks of lactation. Feed cost, now this is an expensive component of the production system. The feed cost will be the greater proportion of the total cost in this phase, because we're spending on concentrates, we're spending on a very good quality forage. Energy and protein requirements increase by 30 to 50% respectively as compared to gestation. An optimal body condition score is required for optimal lactation performance. And again, in this phase, just like late gestation, energy is the first limiting nutrient in lactation. So what is recommended here is that we should have groupings based on the production level of use. If you are saying as a thumb rule, 1 pound of grain for 1 lamb, 2 pounds of grain for 2 lambs, 3 pounds of grain for 3 lambs, it does make sense to have these different groups where these ewes are nursing 1, 2, or 3 lambs respectively, so that we are not wasting feed, or we are not providing less than what is needed. So imagine ewe that is nursing 1 lamb, ewe that is nursing 3 lambs are in the same group. It is possible that either we are overfeeding some or underfeeding some. So if we are making groups, I think it will be very efficient. I understand that, at some of the farms, the number of animals are less, grouping is not feasible, but if number of animals are less, we need to make sure that we can feed them individually so that we don't over or underfeed any animals. Loss of body condition score is completely acceptable here. Completely acceptable, because animals are destined. They are programmed to use body reserves to support lactation. So yes, these animals will lose some body condition. Yearlings should be fed and managed separately until they wean first set of lambs. And this is the same concept we follow for the dairy cattle nutrition. Primiparous heifers, the heifers that are they have the first calved for the first time, they are always grouped separate because they have a different nutrient requirement as compared to multiparous heifers. So again, the same concept applies here. Yearlings should be fed and managed separately until they wean the first set of lambs. Okay, quickly, Luke, I have a quick question. How are we doing on time?
We have as much time as you can give us.
Okay.
So I think we're pretty much on time for the program, but I have no problems if we go longer than that. We've got a couple questions coming in, so keep going at your leisure, and we'll answer them as they kind of come in towards the end.
Okay. So I think I should finish in like 10 minutes,
okay.
And then we can address all the questions.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so the last phase that I'll be discussing today is lamb or kid nutrition. There are 4 phases of feeding these neonates. The first phase is in the uterus, in the fetus. Okay, that's where I mentioned the importance of late gestation feeding. We need to make sure we feed those late gestation ewes well so that this stage, the fetal stage, is not compromised. Okay, so we have covered this part. Neonatal stage, shortly after birth, and I will discuss that, we need to make sure we provide enough colostrum, a good quality colostrum and a good quantity of colostrum, and I'll discuss that in the next slide. Nursing and suckling, that is how we are feeding from birth to weaning after the colostrum feeding is finished. And then depending on where these lambs or kids are going, depending on what their fate is, whether they're finished or their replacement, the way they are fed is different. So new colostrum, very, very important component of this system. We just cannot avoid it. 3 Qs, this is my favorite part. I mean, we need to make sure we feed quickly, adequate quantity, and good quality. Okay, these are 3 Qs very important for colostrum. Quickly, that means we have to feed as soon as possible within 30 minutes. Okay, the first colostrum should be given within 30 minutes. And most of the colostrum should be fed within 12 to 18 hours or within 24 hours. So that means it is quickly. Adequate quantity means at least 10% of the body weight. So if I take an example of 12 pounds of lamb, it is like 19 ounces of colostrum should be fed to this lamb to make sure we are providing enough quantity of this colostrum. And when I say good quality, that means the presence of nutrients, but most important is the presence of immunoglobulins or antibodies, because this is what they're providing immunity to this lamb, and they help in fighting against the disease. So 3 Qs, quickly, quantity, adequate quantity, and good quality. This is the thumb rule we always have to remember for newborns as far as colostrum feeding is concerned. Now, colostrum sources, best source, everyone knows lamb's mother. This is the best source. But yes, we cannot get colostrum from lamb's mother at some instances, or maybe most of the instances at the farm. So then frozen colostrum from another ewe in the flock, it is acceptable to get this frozen colostrum. We have to make sure that we thaw this colostrum slowly. And the reason we do that, so that the protein, the immunoglobulins, the antibodies that are present in the colostrum, they do not get denatured, because that is the most important component of colostrum, other than nutrients. So we need to make sure we thaw it slowly. Cow colostrum is an accepted option, but the thing is we need to provide more, because the amount of fat that is present in cow colostrum is less as compared to the amount of fat that is present in the sheep colostrum. So we need to make sure we balance for the energy from fat that is coming from the cow colostrum. If nothing is available, right, and there are some commercial preparations, for example, milk replacer, they are not colostrum because they do not provide antibodies. But if we have nothing, yes, something is better than nothing. So yes, I mean, not a suitable substitute, but we can give it. That should be fine. Okay, so nursing period, we have 3 options. The first option here is the no supplementation, where the lambs are grazing the forage with ewes. And as long as we have enough biomass available, as long as we have enough nutrients available in the biomass that can support ewes and support lamb, we will never compromise lactation. We will not compromise the growth of lamb as well. And this is the cheapest way to raise lambs and kids to weaning. That is, they are just going out, they are just grazing, nothing else. Now, supplement use, if the biomass is not enough, okay, then we can supplement with concentrate to the ewes. Now, what that will do is that when we're supplementing some of the energy and protein from concentrate, ewes or does, they will not consume that much forages because they are already meeting their requirement, and that forage will be left for lambs. So in case of we have inadequate forage biomass, we can use a supplementation strategy to use this or to divert this forage biomass towards lambs and kids, and diverting away from ewes and does because we are supplementing them. So the milk production can be improved, and the growth rate of these lambs and kids can be improved because both ewes and lambs are getting enough nutrients. Supplement kids or lambs, and this is the creep feeding, where these newborns are given access to supplement feed where moms cannot have access to. Okay, these are free choice feeding, mostly contains 20% crude protein, that has cracked corn and soybean meal that provides energy and protein. We can also have some good quality hay provided the creep feed. It varies from farm to farm as far as management is concerned. I think some of the research data that we have seen, the effects of creep feeding are not very consistent. We cannot say that creep feeding always results in a positive improvement, always results in a better performance. Depends on a lot of other factors like how good is the forage biomass, what kind of supplements we have been providing to moms. So again, there are so many factors. So we cannot say that creep feeding will always be beneficial to the farm. So I highly encourage producers to review the forage biomass available, the nutrients available, and whether they need to creep feed or not. So first several weeks, I think 3 to 4 weeks, mother's milk is more than enough to meet all the nutrient requirements. By the time lambs are around 4 to 6 weeks of age, they are getting as much as 50% of nutrient intake from sources other than mom's milk. And pre-weaning diet will affect rumen development. So what that means is that there has been data, and it has been shown clearly in the case of large ruminants that grains, they help with the development of ruminal papillae. So the grains, when they are present in the rumen, they produce some butyrate as a product of fermentation, and butyrate has shown promising effect on papillae development, rumen papillae. So rumen is developing at, I won't say faster pace, but the papillae is developed well. They are very well formed, and which is very important for nutrient absorption at the later stage of their life. So grains are very important in the pre-weaning diet. Then hay, and then pasture. Okay, now last couple of slides, again, this is a little different. So this is where I stopped talking about nutrition. And last couple of slides, I'll just discuss about the forage production chart. This chart I have received from Dr. Marcelo Valau. He's an agronomist. And I think this will be important to keep things in perspective as far as forage biomass is concerned. On the x-axis, we have different months, right? January to December. And what I'll be showing is the kind of growing pattern in the southeastern United States, pattern as far as forage biomass is concerned. So warm season perennials from April to October, stockpiled forages in the later part of fall, earlier part of the year, small grains, rye, grass, and clover, and then warm season annuals. So I think it is very important to have this kind of picture in mind, like which grasses will grow at what time points, right? Why this is important is because let's take an example of of ewes that are lambing in January. Let's take an example. So here on the x-axis, we have months. These are ewes that are lambing in January. They are weaning in March. And this is how the nutrient requirement, this is how the energy requirement is fluctuating, right? Now, if we know the forage biomass, we can just superimpose that forage biomass on the requirements and make sure that the nutrient requirements are fulfilled. So this is the concept I want to convey, that we should be aware of what kind of biomass is available, what kind of nutrients are available, and whether those nutrients can balance the requirement or fulfill the requirement of for these animals. So this is an example of January lambing, and this is an example of April lambing. Again, we see the fluctuation in energy, and then we just superimpose. And again, this may be different for every farm, depending on what kind of grasses they are growing, what kind of forages they are growing. But I think it is very good snapshot if we can have at the farm. Okay, last slide. So all production phases are important. We can't say that one is not important, one is important. Every production phase is important because animals need nutrients in every phase. We can't say that, oh, this is the maintenance, they don't need energy. It doesn't happen, right? Adequate nutrition program is the key to successful small ruminant production systems. When I say adequate nutrition program, we do not need to go to a very fancy software or ration balancing software. Some very, very important, very key, very basic concepts we have to follow. And we can easily make sure that the feeds are providing adequate nutrients. But body condition score is an essential management practice for assessing adequacy of feeding program. We are not formulating diets, not weighing animals, not doing math on an Excel for formulating diets. This is something that we should do, and I think this is something which is very easy to do at the farm. Late gestation is the most important phase for nutrition and it prepares for lactation and adequate birth weight for survival. Okay, with that, I really thank for providing me this opportunity to share all of this information with you all, and I'll be very happy to take some more questions that we have. Thank you very much.